the chat over there about the difference, and the difference that my question was is that according to the anticipated expenses that was prepared for 2018, in roads, the anticipated expenses was 1.275. Terry's informed me that that estimate was not accurate. They are at about 1.3 is what she's figuring now. So that it's gone up, or 1.3 something. So that's why my question is, you know, why it went up, and she's saying it was because that actual for 2018 is going to be higher than what they had estimated in September. Okay, so that increase is due to wages, so that would be of a grader operator that wasn't included. Plus, so the grader operator plus COLA plus STEP.
And electricity.
And what?
Electricity is up 20,000.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Any other questions on roads then?
We got a lot of them.
Okay. We got a lot of them. Airport.
This is just a number I put in there because I still haven't got anything from the county as to what our share is going to be for the operating portion. And I can't even guess because the staff person that was to send me the invoice was no longer that position, and somehow the ball was dropped and the invoice for the 6 months never went out. So they're going to give us an invoice for the full year. So I'm just guessing it to be 30 this year. It could be less. The water department.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do we not have, does it not show, or should it not show the funds that we have set aside for the?
No, the 125,000 that we set aside are not in the operating budget. They're in the capital budget.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. Any other questions on airport before we leave that? Okay, go on to water.
Water. The actual dollar amount has dropped for the expenses, and the reason for that was, I'm just looking here, there was something that went down enough that made a difference. Okay, last year we had put in a larger amount for the energy efficient lighting for the building, so that was put in at 15,000. In previous years, that budget was only 5,000, and again, it's back down to 5,000. So just that 1 year was a little bit of a jump.
We haven't done it.
And we haven't done it. But I might have been able to find some money elsewhere for that anyways, but it has not been done. And then last year, there was the turbidity meters and analyzers that were not done either. That was budgeted for last year. In 2018. So those are the two items. And if they don't get done this year, the money can be put aside and carried forward to next year to be used next year instead. So it doesn't have to affect this year's 2019 budget.
As well, if council can remember, we had a huge repair bill on the river pump last year. I fought and I fought and I fought with them. It got reduced quite substantially from 22,000 down to, what have we spent, 3,500. I think is what it ended up going to. So, they got tired.
You're very convincing. From 22,000 to 3,500.
But we are, I fought with them because I felt that it should be a warranty issue. finally give in. But we are going to repair the one that was in the water this year out of this year's budget in case something happens next year, because we do have the money there. And I just give them the go ahead. It's going to be $3,400, so that's going to be about $7,000.
So overall, the water department expenses have stayed pretty consistent without going up. The revenues are higher than what we had budgeted for, but I still budgeted about the same as I did in 2017, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, again, the net difference between, revenue and expenses, it's actually it's a drop of 10% because we're making money on this at the end of the day, right? So we're dropping about 10% when you compare apples to other years. And now we had an issue in 2017 with the water, didn't we? We didn't budget it right.
That was yes and no. What had happened there was that there was one of the things in the computer was somehow going into between the sewer department and the water department. Somehow or another, it was going into the wrong GL, and that was fixed, and it's working great now.
Okay. And, okay. Any other questions on water? Just a comment, and we can probably come back to that when we get over to it, but when we look at how much the water is amortized, it's at basically $450,000, and we've only been putting away $255,000. There is a request to put more aside, and that would get us at a cost recovery rate, which we wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's what council had requested that we do for this year.
Yeah, we do need to, if I can ask you to bring back to another meeting, Brian, is what the rates would do to make that fully amortized. So if we amortize we put reserves aside for the full amortization, what would our water rates be? Because that's something where you might want to increase that amount. Okay, sewer.
With sewer, the expenses have gone up just enough to say they've gone up between the 2018 to 2019. The jump between 2017 to 2018 was to do with, I'm just looking here. Where are you?
People pooping more.
I don't think they heard you.
I heard you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Okay, the expenses went down in sewer because of the wages. A half-time person got changed out of the sewer department into a different department, so that's why the wages went down in 2018 compared to 2017.
Okay. And again, the net differences are, the net has dropped a little bit due to, is that just less usage?
That was because of the change that we fixed at the end of 2017 for the 2018 year, that the money that was going into the water department, and that got changed over to into the property department in 2017. if you had 2016 showing, you would see that from 2016, revenue went from 560,000 to almost 700,000. So there was a huge jump in 2016 to 2017. 2018, we didn't know how accurate we'd be, so it was more or less of a guess until we have this totally worked out, and it's looking like our guess was pretty good.
So if I'm looking at your new estimated amount for 2018, based on the new sheet, it would be, you've got actual expenses to date were 296, I'll call it 300,000, and then 63, which I'll call 60, just to round it up. So it'd be about 360,000. Is that?
1, 2, yep.
So we're going to have
Extra, less expenses.
Yeah, less expenses, more income, and we're at around 360,000. But our budgeted was for 257. So there's $100,000 difference between actuals and expenses.
Yes, that's what it looks like it's going to be.
Okay, now.
So we could go down on the sewer rates. Like if you increase the water rates,
Well,
you could go down on the sewer rates.
But what's our amortization on sewer? Our amortization on sewer is 331,
Yes,
and we're only been setting aside 180. So I don't think that we can do that.
no, but I'm just saying that when that water revenue was going into the wrong category, it made that much of a difference.
But I guess, so the other question that falls out of that is if we're showing even less profit in 2019, like in 2018 we're expecting 360,000, and in 2019 we're only showing 251.
In sewer?
Yeah.
Revenue from where?
22, 23.
Well, I'm taking your 2019 budget, as you're saying the net difference between revenue and expenses for sewer is 251,000.
Yes,
Okay, but for this year, the actuals, as best that you can estimate them, is around 360,000.
yes,
So the difference between this year's actuals and the budgeted amount for 2019 is $100,000.
yes.
That's a big difference on a $251,000 budget. Why is it so much different?
Part of it, like I said, a portion of it is from the wages that the half-time person got moved to a different department. We still don't. We're still just estimating what the amount is going to be for the revenue. So it could go down because it's a percentage of the water. So it depends on how much water people use, as to what the amount is for the sewer. We don't know. Maybe we're making money this year, but we may not next year. It's hard to say. Like if
I understand,
Yeah.
but so what you're basically saying to me is you're being very conservative,
yes,
and
I'd rather have money left over than be short.
Okay, it's very conservative, but then
But also very close to what the budget was for last year. I have not changed the budget practically at all for last year to this year.
yeah, it's close to that one. I'm just going. It's very conservative if we're
Yes.
looking to
And the actual for 2017 was actually pretty close to what I'm budgeting.
the 251.
Yep.
Okay. We can leave that alone. There's just some room there to maybe find some money if we need it, I guess. So going to garbage collection.
And this is the one that we may have to increase because the new contractor And there's also $20,000 in the budget for the new Gilwood transfer site that council had suggested that I make sure to put that money in the budget in case it was needed. So there's $20,000 there.
So I'm looking at the, so we had so there's $20,000 for the Gilwood. What did we end up doing with that? Because we wanted to bring that over to the budget discussions. What did we decide? Do you remember? Did we go over that again? No.
So the increase is the $20,000 for the Gilwood transfer site, and another $20,000 was actual garbage pickup and disposal, which is what I already mentioned. So
Yeah.
Big Lakes have never mentioned that yet.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering right here, what do we want to do with that? That's one of our decisions, is what do we want to do with that Gilwood transfer site?
It's still in the
Yeah,
still in discussion. They're trying to get, I think they're trying to get, what they had done, they got a proposal on a transfer site, what it's gonna cost. A man site, and it was astronomical.
yeah.
So they said, no, hold on, redo that. These are our needs. This is, we'll pare it down, so we're waiting back for a better number. Cause it was gonna be like, I think it was $2 million or something like that. A man site, yeah, it was too much, so they, revisit again. Have another look.
So just as an action, are you writing that down, Brian? Just, so you're gonna bring that back to us, and, okay, because there might be $20,000. Do we want that, eh?
yeah, and I did not increase the revenues to offset the increase in the garbage pickup because I wasn't sure what council wanted to do. So that could also be offset by an increased revenue also. So that's again up to council, that part.
Well, and I think, again, we wanted our revenue, or our utilities and those services to be cost recovery, so
Yes.
I think we need to change that so it is cost recovery. So that's another thing we could bring back. What would the rate be to make that cost recovery, Brian, for garbage disposal? So that rate would have to go up a little bit. I'd rather see I see the look in your eyes, Judy, but I think for me, I would rather see utility rates go up because we spread it across a wider group of people versus taxes.
For the garbage, the cost recovery, if you do not put the Gilwood transfer station 20,000, then you don't need to increase the fee at all, and we'll still break even. If council wants to make a few dollars on that for the landfill or whatever else, then that's an option also. But that one would not have to go up
Okay.
because there's no amortization expense on this department.
So it's all depending on the Gilwood transfer station. Whether it's Gilwood.
Okay.
And you also have to remember that we will be debating extra bag tags, which will be another source of revenue. Not much, but it still will be affecting garbage pickup. We're doing that tomorrow.
Really hard to do without a curbside site. Really hard to do, but can be done.
I look forward to your debating tomorrow.
Okay, any other questions on the garbage? Nothing? Moving on to FCSS.
The only thing I have here for FCSS is the request of the seniors bus to increase it again to 12.5. They had it increased 2 years ago from 10 to 11.5, and now they want to increase it to 12.5. That's the only one that I have in here that would be any different.
Now, I think I understand how this works, because it's going up a small amount each year, but we get a grant from the government, and then we just pay our portion of that on top of it, right? And that's why it goes
The
up.
grant is 80% of what needs to be spent for FCSS. The town has to put in the other 20%. So
Yes.
whatever they give us we have to match it with 20%. And we don't know sometimes, like 2 years ago, they increased it in the middle of the year, and that's why we were scrambling. But we never know from until the last minute when it's going to be, when the new agreement comes out. The thing is that 85% of the total amount is what we send to the county for them to spend on the FCSS program. So the other 15% is what the town spends on what the town decides, council decides what they want to do.
So that's based on that grant, and that grant, obviously, if I'm looking at this creeping up, means that the grant has been creeping up from the government too. Is that what
It did from 2015 till now, but I don't know if it's going to go up again or not. I'm waiting to hear. We just signed the agreement, and we should be hearing from them in the next couple of months as to what it's going to be. I believe they have until the end of March to tell us.
Councillor Gilroy?
Do we have any idea how the FCSS bus is going to affect the financing of it? Funding of it is going to affect our contributions if we're, because you just talked about the seniors one. I'm
Yes.
assuming it's next door.
Yeah,
This one?
the problem with the seniors one is the same thing as what I've been fighting for quite a few years on behalf of the seniors. It does not, it's very tough to make it fit under FCSS as it is, because it is not for FCSS functions most of the time. They're bringing the seniors to other things that are not FCSS functions. And we can't pay for capital. We can't pay for things that is not FCSS functions. And so it's getting harder to justify it. And FCSS may cut us off at any time on that 11.5 or 12.5.
Okay, the question, I guess it wasn't fully clear. The question is, right now we're looking at two buses. One FCSS owns, and one the seniors Golden Age owns. Will we be I don't want to say on the hook, because Councillor Long will get me on that one.
Impacted.
Impact, thank you.
I talked to the FCSS coordinator at Big Lakes when I read about the fact that they were getting the bus. Their bus is going to be used again also for a variety of things. They're going to be sending it to Grand Prairie. They're going to be picking up people in the county. If there's room, they'll also pick up people in town. The FCSS bus, as it currently is being used, probably won't change much. There'll just be more options for the seniors. My biggest concern is, like I said, is the funding. We have to justify it, and I had to ask them for a lot more detail, and if they can't supply it, then next year FCSS may not allow us to spend that 11.5 or 12.5 on from the FCSS funds. It would have to come from council's donations.
That's what I want to know. Thank you.
No other questions on FCSS?
So does council want to increase it to 12.5 or not?
Sorry, like right now, increase this by the number that you've got here as an additional?
The amount that they requested in their letter that council received and sent to budget deliberations is asking them for 12. They are asking for 12.5.
Okay, that's not included in the amount that you gave us on here for 2019.
Yes, it is, but it's highlighted because I didn't have a motion. I didn't have anything stating for council to approve that 12.5. That's why I've got it highlighted in your detailed printout.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen the deal
Yeah.
yet. I'm just looking at the summary, and when I look at
Yeah.
the summary document, you're in 2018. The net difference was 24,000, and in 2019 the net difference is 25,500.
It's that 1,000 basically from their request. But again, that depends on what council decides.
So, well, we haven't made decisions about it, little pieces of this yet, so we'll leave it in
This
there.
particular one, council does have to make a decision on because it is a separate request from an outside organization that you guys said to send to budget deliberations, which is now. So this one here, council does have to make a decision on.
Well, we sent the Gilwood transfer station to budget deliberations, and that's sort of from an outside group, and we're letting that one go. So, but anyway, we can decide on this one. What do you guys think?
These are the citizens that gave this town everything. These are the people that worked hard for us so that we can have the luxury of sitting here. And so, $1,000 increase, these are the people we shouldn't be hitting. If we got tax breaks to make, we have to make cuts, we have to do things, so be it, but it shouldn't be on the backs of our seniors. They can ill afford that. Thank you.
I didn't figure that out right away. Ah, now I get it, yeah. Councillor Gilroy, yeah.
Well, the way I look at this is we need to approve it because it is a very important part of our community. And if we approve it and it's turned down, we'll just have to find the $12,500 from somewhere else. So it's not really 1,000, Councillor Long, it's 12,500. And you know what? The seniors in this, I don't think we should deny them that ability. I think we should just, if we have to, as I said, we bring it from somewhere else within our own council budget to make it up. So I'm in favor of approving the 12.5.
But just so I'm clear, it's not an additional 12.5, it's an increase from the 11.5, yeah.
But
So
it may or may not be, depending on what it is
Right,
instead. So,
I got a phone call from FCSS about 3 weeks ago, and they were asking a lot of detailed questions about some of the stuff that we had put through. So they are getting stricter about getting more and more details from these organizations.
so we have to be prepared for the fact that we may have to pay the whole thing, not out of FCSS money, but out of our rest. That's why I'm saying
Yeah.
the 12.5 as opposed to the 1,000.
Okay, any other discussions on it? We should make a vote, so we got a motion. Did you catch the motion, Nancy?
Yeah, if.
Perfect. All in favor? Okay, you got a motion there. Opposed? Sorry. Opposed? Okay. Councillor Long made the motion, yep.
And Judy wants you to walk.
Yeah.
Okay, the cemetery department is basically the same almost every year. It fluctuates very little, and it's mostly for the grounds maintenance.
I noticed that it's gone down a little bit. I'm just curious with everything else that's gone up, why this has gone down, or is it?
We never sold them any plots.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, the ask in 2017 and 18, the net difference was 31,000. And in 2019,
You are correct, Mr. Mayor. There was the local improvement charges that came off in 2018. It was the last year, and that was $2,923.55.
Yeah, so that's the difference.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to planning and development.
Another choice. Cremation is taking a profit.
Okay. So, we're looking at planning and development.
Yes, and
Really no change from 2018 to 2019.
not in the budget, no.
Now, help me explain, what are we spending the $131,000 on? Well, that's the net difference.
There's some wages, a half-time position, In 2017, it was put as a full-time position, but it wound up, it's only half because the other half is being paid out of admin.
This big one's MMSA.
Yes, that's the big one. 90,000 is the MMSA.
Okay.
That's the big one.
So basically, this is 90,000 MMSA and a half-time position there. Okay, so that's not going to change unless we want to do something with MMSA. But
Actually, I think we're doing quite well with MMSA with what we're getting, but I noticed that at least our legal fees will be going down.
for one more year. Did we ever get, like, I haven't noticed the active website. That was supposed to be gone active eons ago. Like, what's happened with that?
I believe that admin has full access to it, and Public Works has been using it. The idea came that in the end, no final decision, and I was there just last week, no final decision has been made by our town as to, in regard to FOIP, what can actually be put on what we've chosen to put public on our website. And that's up to our council and our admin to get together and finalize exactly what you want anybody going on there to be able to have access to. There's certain FOIP things that are very, that we have to decide whether or not we want available to the public. And that's the only thing stopping it.
Okay, well, we've been there for an awful long time. That's been 5 months at this point.
But we haven't made a decision on it, and they can't do anything without us making a decision on it.
Okay, but, and what they're doing in other communities and what, because I'm sure they've all had legal opinions in the past. Okay. Yeah, because I'd like to see something that the public would see what they're getting for that. What else are we getting for the $90,000? I mean, we got the design on the ESSO. What else?
I think they've started the JC Park.
Well, actually, they have said that they will do, within our contract, they will actually talk to the Recreation Department and Advisory Group, however you want to call it, Rec Department, and they will, within the budget that we have, they will actually help design JC Park renewal. They are working with the ESSO, all the effort going into ESSO. They've been working on our bylaws for cannabis, for all sorts of other ones. We even dealt with the fact that there was the subdivision and the division of the property and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things. We actually have a lot. I don't know what the total dollar value would be, but I would anticipate that over a year we're getting more than $90,000 worth of money back from them in actual services.
Yeah, we should get a summary, at the year that says this is what they've done for us in 2018, so we can sort of look at it just to say here's
I would be more than happy to give you my. Okay, I was going to say I can give you the package.
Just to see that.
I can put the package that we receive as a committee member available to anybody on our council at any time.
Well, if that's what it explains, that would be
It
good.
explains what they do
Yeah.
plus what other different groups do too.
Okay, because that's $90,000 we want to make sure is being spent wisely. Tourism.
Tourism, the big increase here is the tourist information booth, which is a separate department from the museum, even though it's the museum that's asking for the increase. It goes and falls under the tourism. We were giving them $7,000 in the past, and they're wanting to increase that to $15,000. The other expenses in this category are a little bit for insurance and a little bit of brochures and items for tourists. But the biggest chunk is, of course, the 7 going up from 7 to 15 if council agrees.
Okay, now, well, and we're going to talk about the museum, but I thought the museum, when I was looking at the summary that was sent Brian, you sent out that email on why the museum was more. I thought that included the
The
extra
museum
money
is
for-
operating the visitor information booth, which is why it went under their request, but in the financials, it falls under a different category.
Oh, okay, so this, because their actual ask here was for, yeah, nice, so that's an increase of 11,000 plus the additional ask, which is up top, okay, which is in the tourism.
So 8,000 is for the tourist information booth. It's currently at 7, and they want 15 from each of us at the county. They're asking for 30 total.
Brian?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Donna.
And explain the increase. The 14,000 that the museum was getting barely covers the amount of time that's spent by the summer students in the tourism department of the museum. As well with AGLC, they are very specific, as the letter that Darlene had sent stating that none of the monies that are earned from casinos that go to the museum for planning, etc., can be used for or by the tourism information booth. So they have to be, and and AGLC is very picky. That is, like if they forced us to break it down, like that's lighting, they're very, very specific. We were asked to take on the museum. The museum was asked by the town to take it on for 1 more year, and in the process of doing their presentation to the county when they were doing their tourism presentation that they were getting from the different organizations, it was found that the museum is actually losing money having the tourism booth in there. So that was the reason for the increase. If they want to keep it in the museum, pony up, because the museum can't afford it with what they're getting now.
Okay, so that's from 7 to 14,000,
7 to 15.
or 15. Yeah.
That is just the town's share. It's actually going from 14,000 to 30,000.
And I know with the tourism, lots of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, do we have to have a manned tourism booth?
No.
Why?
Well,
The museum is an accredited visitor information center, and there's certain hours that you have to be open from starting, I think it's May until the end of September.
And it has to be manned.
Yes.
I guess when I was saying no, I wasn't saying no because of an accredited station, but I know that there are some communities that have gone to online visitor information centers. So you don't have a place that you can physically pull into and get your visitor information. It's all online. You get on your phone and
Yeah, see, no, that's not my vision. Okay, here's my vision of the Visitor Information Center. Now, this could be my OCD talking, but I just find this just way too cluttered. This whole center here with the seniors museum town office. We take the visitor information, put it over where Tim Hortons is going to be, but it's a kiosk. You're going to have the map of High Prairie with your hotspots. Like a kiosk in the mall, you are here. Hotspot, EC Bar Ranch, press it, virtual reality. Well, they have a corn maze, they have a slide, everything there. Town of High Prairie, hotspot, JC Park. Press that button, virtual reality. We got walking trails. We got are we going to stay? We have to decide Are we staying, as it's always been, handing out paper pamphlets? Are we moving forward in the future and have a electronic kiosk where people can actually pull into, because you got to look at it from a visitor's point of view, not from the people in High Prairie that know where this stuff is, but they're coming through town, they're pulling a 40-foot camper. Where's the information booth? Where's it? Oh, we just passed it. Where do we park? Where do we pull off? Keep on trucking. We got open space out there. We got a Tim Hortons that's going to open up, that's going to coming soon, increase the traffic. They're going to have a place to park. Why does it have to be a manned? Why can't we not go electronic? Why can't we move forward in the future?
I'll address that one a little bit, because that's one of the items that we've been discussing at the intermunicipal, or the ICF, the Intermunicipal Collaborative Framework. We talked about how we wanted to work with that tourist information center and what it would look like moving ahead. And that's why I'm saying it could be a virtual or a live hotspot, or maybe it's a physical building, but then you have to pay to build that spot, and then you have to pay to man it, and because you may not want to leave a computer, an active computer thing there with nobody on it. So there's all of those things that do need to be looked at, and as part of the framework, between us and the county, wanted to look at our options in the next year and decide what we wanted to do. And if we want to move out of the museum, then we could. If we want to keep it there, like the museum doesn't really want it there anymore, but they've agreed to take it on for one more year. So we have to find another home for it.
Be nice to build
Okay.
a nice one like Slave Lakes, but I'm just saying.
But do we, I asked for stats. How many people actually use this visitor information? How many people went through visitor information? Is it worth that amount of money for how many people? But we don't have the stats, so we're going to make a blind decision without stats.
They do have some stats on it.
We sent that.
Huh?
We sent that request to Darlene.
Oh, I thought there was stats that they gave us at the ICF, that they had this many visitors. No? Okay. Well, we should get the stats, and because we'll need that for that decision moving ahead. And, well, no, this is for like in 1 year. We're not going to build a new interactive thing.
But you're going to commit $15,000.
Yeah. Or we don't have one, right? That's the other option. Yeah.
Where do
We're
we
not
cut?
accredited.
Where do we cut?
That's right.
Here's a
Yeah.
place to cut.
And if we're accredited, then we are on the provincial websites. If we're not accredited, then we're off that tourist information site.
Here's a place to cut.
Again, that's peanuts, really. Like I'm not saying, yeah, at some point you got to save. But
15,000 from one, 15,000 from another,
yeah,
it all
you
adds
gotta add
up.
up.
Can't see the elephant.
Go ahead.
Up until now, I'm assuming that you still paid someone to do, or the museum paid someone to do this and found the excess somewhere else. Does that mean it came previously out of wages? Are we transferring money from wages over, or are we increasing the overall cost? Because obviously it ran. Councillor Denacta just said that they had summer students who had to man it, and it was costing them money to run it. Where was that money coming from? Was it coming from a different part of the budget? Were they going into a deficit? So it's sort of like when we go back to adding the extra admin person from the rec department. We're taking money possibly from the rec department wages and putting it in admin. Are we doing the same thing by putting that 8,000, taking it from wages that are already there, or is it an addition so that we can pay more students? Like, what is it actually going to accomplish?
Basically, every year Darlene would apply for a STEP grant. So that would cover the 2 students, part of it, and then the county basically gave the museum 14 grand to run that tourism information.
So, I'm sorry.
So basically it would be a complete increase in the amount of money.
Thank you.
Who was on the museum budget review committee? Hmm? Oh, I thought there was. Oh, there wasn't. Oh, okay. I thought that was one that was supposed to have one too. No, okay, sorry. Okay, well that's,
If council wishes, because the museum does not need this money until May, council could postpone the increase if they wish to wait for that increase. We'd just give them the main amount, the usual amount to start with, and then council can deliberate this more later on if that's what they wish.
well, just. Yeah. Again, and this is just my viewpoint, it's 1 year, 1 more year, we would keep that in place until we decide what we want to do for the following year. Otherwise, we're dropping that service, right? And those are the decisions.
But we still don't have the facts behind how many people are actually using this service. Are we going to pay $15,000 for 10 people who went through the town and used it? Is that a good way to spend our money? We don't have the stats.
Good. Yeah, so have you got that down to ask her again about the stats, Brian? Okay.
Well, we emailed her.
Yeah, so we can get those stats and then we can bring that to final budget deliberations, like when we go on the final one. We can go over it then.
As soon as we get the numbers, we'll send them to everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Right, so are we still giving the 7,000? Without
8,000.
numbers?
Well, we'll leave it in it now, and then when we get the numbers, we can decide whether we want to take it in or out at the final budget.
For additional 8.
Yeah.
Is that fair to the museum, Councillor Danaka, since you are the rep?
Well, I think in terms of planning, I think it would be, I'm sure Darlene would prefer to know now than in April when the tourist information booth's supposed to be open May, and then you have to plan your people, and I mean it's at the cost that or at the amount that the museum's getting paid now to do that, they're losing because they're offsetting the wages, because it doesn't cover it. Because there's certain hours that you have to be open. You have to be open weekends. Like basically, it's 7 days a week in the summer until September, and 14 grand doesn't cover it.
Okay, and we'll move on to, we can come to that once we get the numbers. We'll revisit this as a final one. And now we'll just leave it in. We go to economic development.
No change.
Now, it's actually gone down by $2,000, which is good in the net. Do you know why that is? And we also had in the actuals, it shows a profit in there in 2017 and 18. The
Okay.
actuals show a profit.
Yeah, the reason for that is twofold. The reason that we increased the business licenses by about 2,000 a year. We have been making sure that we have been catching people that are operating businesses. We've been sending our bylaw people out to give them fines, getting them to renew their licenses. And so we've been keeping on top of it a lot more, which is what has increased the business licenses by about 2,000 a year. And in 2018, we also did use a little bit, almost $6,000 worth was set aside from an operating grant for the rebranding. But if that's not completed by the end of December, we will have to return that grant.
Okay. So we were making a little bit of money in 17 and 18, but now we're showing a little bit of expense. Again, this is just being cautious budgeting. Is that the... Like the actuals in 2017 and 18, we were showing a slight profit. And like you said, we raised the business licenses and everything. And the net in 2019, we're showing, $1,600. And again, I'm just saying this is probably about a $7,000 or $8,000 difference, and that's just being cautious again.
No, the 2018 budget reflected the subsidized doctors' housing. We're not budgeting enough for it because of the rents having gone up, so we had to increase that by a couple thousand as a contingency. If it's not used, then fine, but it has to be there if it is needed. We found that out the hard way in 2017 because the amount that was budgeted was substantially less than what was actually paid out. And there was also an increase in the memberships and conventions. There is $2,500 there that was not paid in 2017 to the LSLEA. So that was a savings in 2017. And in 2018, that money was partially used for species at risk and for Roger Brooks membership for economic development. And what else? I think that's about it. So those are, the total difference is only a couple thousand.
Yeah, it's not I was just wondering because we're showing this, like the actuals versus what we're budgeting for is a little bit different. But moving on to subdivision and development.
Are we going to be able to have, are we going to have to get back to 6,000 at the end of the month? MSI, she just said if we don't have rebranding done by December 31st, we got to send that money back.
Some of it's paid already. Yeah.
Well, we still have to send it back if it's not used. So is that going to cost an extra 6,000 to the budget because we have to send it back?
What did we pay, 3,500 to him already?
No, we've only paid him 3,000 because it was half. It was 3,500 because his fees were 2,500. His travel was 1,000. So we still owe him 2,500. So we can only claim the amount that we've paid.
So we can keep that much. We don't have to give that money back.
Correct.
Okay.
But if the rest is not spent, we cannot use the grant for it.
Okay. I wanted to clarify on that one.
Why would we not spend the rest, like on what we've got the grant for?
You'll have to ask your committee, rebranding committee. I don't know, but they haven't spent the money yet. They haven't finished with the consultant. I don't know the details, so you'll have to talk to your committee.
But one way or another.
What's that?
We haven't got another invoice from him.
Okay.
So, from Paul Salver.
I think we better get it. Otherwise, MSI will take the money back and we still have to pay the bill.
There's another meeting coming up for branding? Okay. Okay. So at that meeting, we make sure we get an invoice from him for what other work he's done since then. Oh, okay. We'll need to.
I know Marion was still trying to get some more information for the committee.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, and we can ask about getting the invoice so we don't, we spend whatever we need to before the end of the year.
I think there was, in all fairness to the committee, I don't think they wanted to spend it all. They wanted to keep some back until he was providing some information that they were requesting.
They were requesting, yeah. Okay. Okay, so he might not get some more unless we get, because I know he was doing some more changes to the logos and that kind of stuff, yeah. Okay, Nothing else on economic development? Subdivision and development?
The debenture interest is going down, which is why it's going down slightly. And there was the difference between 2017 and 2018, council had requested that we put $15,000 aside for possible strategic planning, brownfields and downtown revitalization, etc. So that money was put aside, but it was never used. So I've left it in the budget in case it's used next year. So I would say not much change here.
Okay. Well, it's going from a net difference from 51,000 to 64,000.
And again, that's partially because of the down of the debenture interest and the increase. It's kind of weird. The local improvement charges for Cornerstone, if somebody pays out the lots in full, it's considered revenue. So some years it'll be 1 lot, some years it'll be 5 lots. It fluctuates so much we cannot predict, because it's tied in with the local improvement charges on that debenture with the Cornerstone project. So that's why the revenue fluctuates like it is, and we can't predict that whatsoever.
Okay, I'm just looking at the revenue. Oh no, it was 44,000.
1 year it was 19, the next year it was 41, the next year was 22, the next year's already 32, but 10 is going to be reversed, and so it's all over the place.
Okay, well, you're talking about the debenture going down, and yet we're paying another
The interest portion,
13,000.
the interest portion is going down,
Okay,
but
it's-
approximately $2,000 a year.
but we're paying $13,000 more next year as a net, and I'm just trying to get my head around why. Because you're saying it
It's
should.
because of the revenue being decreased by 15,000.
Oh, okay, that's the revenue has gone down. And that's just an anticipated revenue that you're thinking is going to be less than.
It's usually been approximately 1 lot per year, so I'm leaving it at 1 lot per year as my estimate. It could be 0 even.
Did you change the budget estimation from year to year, or is that? Because I know, I'm just looking at.
Yeah, yes, it did for the 1 year, because we knew that we had 5 lots that were going to be paid out in January, so we were able to do that for that year, because we knew that in 2018 that there was going to be those 5 lots that Toco bought.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on this one? Everybody's getting burnt out here. A few more. Rental.
The expenses are fairly consistent. It's the revenue that changes depending on how many units we have rented out, and that fluctuates quite a bit. Right now we are full, and so if we keep that same amount full, then that increases the budget for the revenue portion, but I can definitely decrease it. I would prefer decreasing it, but yes, because we can't count on all the rooms at the Moose Tooth building and here in the admin building to be rented out. So my personal opinion is to drop it, but.
By how much?
Well, you did drop the revenue in 2019. I got a little note. Just wondering, where have I got that here? The revenue in 2019 is 126. And what's the revenue in 2018?
105.
105. Oh, okay, it's gone up. The revenue's gone up. But our actuals overall on this one have been 11,006.
Our budget for 2018 was almost the same as our actuals for 2017.
Yeah. So our actuals has been around 20,000 in 2018, and the actuals in 2017 was actually had a loss of 11, eh? Yeah, it seems, I see where it's gone up and down depending on how many people are in. Yeah. Recreation.
Well, actually, what
What was her recommendation? She said she'd like to turn it down.
Well, yeah, we've got all of these things we haven't changed much on. We're just sort of getting an understanding on most of it, right? But I mean, it's not, I don't know if that's outrageous, like that's a reasonable assumption that we should make. We made $20,000 in 2018, so saying that we're going to be at 11,000 in 2019 doesn't seem outrageous. You can be more cautious, but we've been cautious. What's that?
Sorry, what did you say?
In 2018,
Yeah.
we've made about $20,000 from our rentals.
you'll notice that part of that rental is also the $3,600 grant that we give to the Chamber of Commerce, which we've been fighting over the last couple of years, whether or not to renew that. So that's like,
Well, that's not a,
it's put in there as revenue. And I'm just, as I said,
Yeah.
I'd like to know roughly how much were you looking at? Like $10,000 less?
Correct. Split the difference between what we are getting for 2018, and that way we're pretty well covered if one of the units in one of the two buildings is empty.
I mean, this is just, again, sort of an interim budget, right? We can change it at the final budget when we get there. Let's get to the big one that's going to be, I'm sure, take some time. Recreation.
Well, there's nothing under the Recreation Board per se, because technically we will no longer be giving money to the Recreation Board. So we have to flip the page for the Recreation and Parks Department. Okay, where is it? Okay, so I put it in the one page further. One page, where are you? Okay. I put it in a line item in the summary. But the amount that I had, that I put into the budget was what was presented at the preliminary meeting that Lori had with her, with the previous board. And that's the number I put in there because I had no idea what number to use. So that'll be up to council. And Lori will have to speak more on that because I don't have any details.
Okay, so if I'm just looking at the net between 2017 and 2018, and then now at 2019. The net ask is actually from 2018 to 2019 has gone down by, I'm going to say $15,000 in this department. So it's $15,000 less. But this was going back to way back at the start. We had talked about
What staff?
administration had an extra person from recreation, so if we take a person's wage and then we take off the decrease, there's still an increase in there of some, but do you want to speak on this?
Excuse me, I can speak to this. The number that is included in the budget, that came from I actually thought that was last year's number that was being put in there. The numbers that went to a preliminary meeting was not a complete budget because of the transfer to a department of the town. There's some numbers that that weren't provided to me by the time of that meeting. So what the committee did, or I guess it was the rec board at the time, they just received it for information, and then we still haven't worked through all of those numbers. Then I had committee members that were away, so I wouldn't have had quorum. So we have yet to have those meetings. So that number is really almost irrelevant right now. It's an interim number until we get those final numbers. So Brian is well aware of the circumstances that, or the challenges that we've had to have a budget.
Yeah,
Board
there was also
councils.
supposed to be a budget review committee on that
Yes.
one too, and that hasn't
Yeah.
happened either. Now, I mean, you've been dealing with this. What's your estimation on the budget?
I really don't want to speak to, I don't feel it's my place to speak to any numbers because they haven't been approved to go to council. So I'll leave that at that. I will say that I think there will be an increase simply because of circumstances that are different from the Recreation Board to being under the town, such as benefits, RSP contributions, things that are going to be an expense through the town department because they are mandatory under the town, but weren't under the Recreation Board. So there will be an increase there. Other than that, I'm just not comfortable to speak to numbers when the committees haven't addressed those things yet.
So just, one and then you can go, is, what's the expected timeline to have this done, or do you know, Brian?
When do you have in the meeting?
As soon as I have the numbers that I've requested.
You're requesting numbers?
Yes, from the town.
Oh,
Well, I mean, I am the town too, but I know
requesting
there's-
numbers
I know,
on what?
I know Terry's still working on insurance, so I don't have those numbers. And yeah, when I have those numbers, then the meetings can be called.
Okay.
So the numbers that you haven't gotten yet, they're from the rec board?
No,
The
the town.
No.
The town on some of the changes, like how much for insurance and how much for wage increases with benefits, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Really frustrating to come to a budget meeting and have our biggest issue, which is the rec department, and have no real numbers to work with, why are we even here? Every year, we have to wait for the rec board. And here we are, waiting for the rec board again. How big is this department? I don't know. How big? Just a small amount of money? And you're worried about thousands of dollars here and $12,000 there. And we have $500,000 and we can't have the numbers to make a decision on it? What kind of dog and pony show? This is crazy. This is the one that we needed to talk about. This is the one that has to have discussions. This is the department that is either going to make or break our budget. And once again, we have to wait every year for this department. What a crock. And you wonder why I get frustrated. This is unacceptable. Those numbers should have been ready for us and here. Wow. How do we pass this budget? You cannot pass this budget. Wow. So we're worried that we're not going to have, it's not going to be fair for the museum to operate because they don't have the right amount of money. And we have $500,000 sitting on the table. We have no idea. None. And every year we wait for the rec board.
Councillor Gilroy.
In a lot of ways, I agree with Councillor Long. I'd like to remind this council that when we got together and decided the different committees that would review it, the library board was told we had to do it before we went to this, before we came to budget meeting. The rec board, I believe that it's Councillor Long and Mayor Panessa that are the people who are accountable to this council to have gotten it done. And so all I want to know from, and our CAO as well, is we do need a definite date from you as to when you will look this over. Because as Councillor Long said, this is an extremely big one. And I was under the understanding that, as I said, the fire department met, that all our committees had to meet in order to have this stuff ready for us to go through. And I'm very disappointed that, and I'm not saying it's because of the transition or numbers or whatever. I'm just saying, regardless of what the excuses are or the reasons are, when we made up these committees to actually expedite, I believe it was the word, expedite the budgetary process with the county, it was an understanding that they would be ready in time for us to look at them. And so all I want is a commitment of when it's going to be done, because that's part of the responsibility each one of us took on when we went on these committees to do the finances.
Anyways, I know Lori was in my office and we tried to get enough members of the rec board, which is the 4 members, to make quorum so she could have a meeting. And Councillor Rose is gone now. Councillor Marks from the county was gone for a week, so I said it's to have them, at least 3 members of that committee, to discuss it prior to the budget review committee.
So what's the date?
You got a date, or have you been in contact with them when, or do you know when Debbie's back, or she's back this Friday? So initially, when I talked to Lori, I said probably the week of the 18th, that week.
December.
December, yes.
So next week is what you're saying.
Yes.
So that's the board, that's the rec, it's not the rec board anymore, but the rec.
Rec.
Association, I guess.
And that's a good point.
Joint Recreation Committee.
So, the board that is structured of 4 individuals, what authority do they now have with this department?
They will.
Do we have to wait for them every year? Are we still dealing with the rec board of 4 individuals in order to get budget information and have them to give us? Do we have to wait for them?
There is an advisory committee.
Advisory. Okay, so now as an advisory committee, is this group of 4 individuals going to have oversight over this budget every year, and we have to wait for their approval of the numbers? Are we still playing the same game?
It was my intentions of them to review the budget and then to forward it on to the joint advisory committee.
So isn't that what they do now?
But it's the same if you're on a board with the museum or the library on one of the other committees. They review it, then it goes to the budget review committee. So it's the same as every other committee in the town.
But then you're still talking, they do it, and then you have to get you and Councillor Long and the treasurers together to review that and then bring it back to us.
It is a
And this
department
is
of this.
before,
It's a department of this town now.
So is the
It's a
library.
recreation department, right? And so the numbers should be going from the recreation department to the treasurer, to the CAO, and to us. The rec board is an advisory board that we're going to be able to use their nonprofit status so that when people are writing for grants, et cetera, they can utilize that. My understanding is that the recreation board is no longer having anything to do with the day-to-day operations of the recreation department. The recreation department is our department. It is the department that Lori will provide the information gets put in by the treasurer gives the information to the CAO, he puts it in the budget, and we get it. What are the 4 individuals having to do with oversight over our department when that wasn't supposed to be the intent of this? And I knew when we were talking about it and it was going to be an authority, I knew this issue I knew it was going to happen. The rec board itself is still in existence. The rec board of 4 individuals is still having oversight over how we spend or how we allocate dollars to the recreation department. The county is still saying to us, we want a say in how you're spending those dollars.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
There was a joint recreation committee formed. There was terms of reference, I believe, that came to this council and were passed by the council. So that is, those terms of reference dictate the responsibilities of the joint recreation committee.
Okay, so just moving on, and we got next week, what did the county use? Because they've already passed their interim budget. How could they have passed the budget without knowing what numbers are used, do you know?
I believe Heather used the same numbers, didn't she, Terry? That we have here.
They used the same numbers.
It's the interim, so.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait to see that so we can work on a budget going from forward.
So parks, the campground was split out of the parks in the 2019 budget. We've been keeping track of it in the 2018, as you can see in the actual. In the budget it wasn't there, but we've split it out so that we could have a better idea of how the campground is doing. And the biggest drop from 2018 to 2019 is the repairs that were going to happen to the Amoresco because of the Amoresco report. And those did not happen yet, but there was $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 put aside in 2018 budget for those items. And so that $80,000 is still sitting there if it's not spent by the end of the year. Other than that 80,000, everything is pretty well almost the same.
And just so I'm clear, what does the parks cover? What is that?
It covers things like the debenture on the interest on the arena/pool, because that was not part of the recreation board, so that was in this department. It includes the the work that's was the campground, which I separated out. It used to include that. It has the maintenance. It's got all these little things. So the electricity for the campground, for the there's electricity in another spot. I'm trying to remember where it's at. Walking trails. The there's a little bit of insurance, a little bit of all sorts of things. The grounds maintenance of $40,000 is the one of the bigger expenses on that.
And what does that include? Ground maintenance of what? Like basic parts?
Boulevards, the town office, that park, McIntyre Park.
Does that include the golf course as well? 'Cause
No.
I'm looking where it says golf club.
Yes,
there.
there was a golf course, did not have its own department, and there was only one entry, so it was put into the parks, and because it's supposed to be parks and recreation. I put the title as only parks so that it wouldn't be confusing, because we used to have the recreation board and parks, so rather than parks and recreation. But yes, the golf course, there was a little bit of money given to them last year.
And interdepartmental charges, of course,
Yep.
are 72,000.
So why is this one at 72,000?
Mowers, gas, meters. But it also says it may be adjusted lower, right?
What's that?
It also says, well, you don't have the description.
Yeah, it is going to be adjusted lower probably, because when I originally did the equipment pool, I estimated using the previous year's numbers as actuals as my budget, and right now it's looking like each of the departments, like I mentioned before, is going to get reimbursed a little bit from the equipment pool, because the equipment pool has not spent that much this year, and so they'll all be getting rebates. But it was budgeted for $72,000 for this department.
And the difference in the net value of what I heard you say from in 2018, the net cost of this department was basically $300,000, and now in 2019, the projection is $230,000. That $70,000 is all Amoresco.
Correct.
Basically, that's what
Yep.
it is.
If you compare the 2019 budget to the 2017 budget, they're just slightly different. There's not much difference there. They've
Okay, any other questions on this?
I'm assuming by this that we'll be paying off the pool and the arena for a long time to come. Is that right?
20 years from
2006 or 2008, so
2020.
we're halfway.
We should make sure the public knows that when they come up with ideas of building new stuff, that we still have a lot of money to pay.
On the positive, the water plant's paid for in 2022. Just in time to upgrade. Yeah.
So then the campground, as I said, we've split that out, and basically we're just trying to break even on that one. As long as we break even, we're happy.
So we're showing the campground costing us about $4,000 a year.
Yep.
That's good.
And that's a little bit of amortization, and we made sure that what was not in here before was the electricity. The electricity was in the other department, and we've made sure to put it into this department now. And so the power has increased the expenses by $3,500.
So this is another one where we could probably look at it being cost recovery.
Correct.
Brian, could you come back with a recommendation on the rates for fees by law?
The rates were increased just a year or two ago, and right now, I didn't want to say anything, but since you brought it up, there might be an adjustment here by a couple thousand, so it will be at a zero.
Okay, well, I want to see it at that amount, and that's why I'd like to just come back with a recommendation to get that to zero.
And next is the museum, and this is where council may want to discuss the increase that was requested. There was $20,000 in the Amoresco report for 2018 that was not spent. We wound up spending money under capital for that other stuff, for that wall. The $20,000 was for some other odds and ends, which can be rolled over to 2019 if council wishes.
I'm just looking at they had a revenue of $54,000 in 2018.
That was the grants.
That was the grants, okay.
One grant of 30 and one grant of 24 for the wall. It's really strange the way that the new accounting standards require us to put the revenues into an operating budget, and yet, because it's a capital expense, the capital portion of the expense goes into a different budget. And I'm against it, and I've argued with it, but I'm wrong because it's a CICA handbook rules, so.
Okay, so, and maybe Donna, you can just refresh us, the increase, like I'm just looking from the net difference for the museum in 2017 was 70,000. In 2018 was 86,000.
But you have to take the 20,000 off there for the Amoresco.
Oh, okay. So it went up by 20,000 for Amoresco?
20,000 of expenses, so yes,
It would have been 66.
correct.
And then in 2019 is 98, and the increase then, how much of that is Amoresco?
None.
So we're going from, let's call it 70,000 to 97,000.
It's 30,000.
Yeah, basically it's a 40% increase or 39% increase.
The portion that the museum is asking for is 50% increase.
Remind me again what that's for. And it's not the extra manpower for the.
Jardine sent us an email explaining the budget, what it's for.
With the budget.
There's one spot in there about honorariums. They went from $0 to $8,400. The board decided that they didn't want their honorarium, so that you can strike the $8,400 out of that. And the museum, out of all the committees that the town has, the museum is the only one that does not pay their board members honorariums. Every other board pays their honorariums. So you can take that 8,400 out of there. I can't remember what.
I sent this to all of you.
Yes, and I read it and.
Yeah, that's the same as the other group now.
Tomorrow morning, Mark. Okay.
Tell us.
Right.
Well, Donna's talking, so.
For operations.
I can tell you some of the differences here. The salaries and salary expense, the projected original was, according to their report, which Donna has, 218 projected was 90,000. The 219 is 135. Okay, roughly 45,000. One of the, basically another big one would be they're getting some new equipment. Donna would answer the big increase. I think it's to do with adding additional staff, Donna? Is that right? Yes. The museum is seeking an increase of $31,400 for operations. This would bring the museum operating grant to a total of $93,400 per year, or $23,350 per quarter. Through ongoing critical, transparent, and honest evaluations, the museum board has identified areas that it must improve upon in order to be more relevant and engaging to the community. It is vital to the sustainability of the museum that we increase our staff from 1 full-time to 2. That's Darlene's words in there.
Yes.
And but then there's a couple other small ones in there. But anybody wants to look at this? That's the major one of 40,000. They're getting some new equipment, and pretty much everything's about the same except for that, and maybe gift shop resale that goes from $1,750 to $5,000. And building maintenance, I'm assuming that's Amoresco, from $1,500 in 2018 to $11,000.
No.
Okay, I don't know what that is. I'm just going by the budget she gave us, and I don't know anything about that one.
And the decrease in the
I avoided saying that one because you said the decrease.
the decrease, I think, because in the email that Terry had sent us, you had a question about the gift sales. Okay, I thought you were talking about the framing part of it. Okay, I can't answer the gift sales.
It could be. I know that some of the small businesses in our town have been saying the transport has been very expensive when they've been. So is that? Do you think that could be part of it? That because there are businesses in town who've said that the transportation costs are sometimes exceed the cost of their merchandise, which might go toward the because there is a difference. They projected $1,750 and it went to $3,563, so they almost doubled in that. So it could easily be transportation costs.
Well, we know those truckers are making big money. We know that.
They can afford red shirts with their name on it.
Okay.
So a short summary, I would say then would be that the biggest expense is the new staff person, which is doubling their staff.
And the reason that came up is number one, with Darlene being the only employee, she probably has 6 months of vacation time that she can't take, and we can't pay her for because we don't have it in the budget. We found out as well with Darlene becoming injured for 4 months that there was nobody to keep the museum open. Thank God Linda wasn't working. She worked the month of June until the summer students came in July. As well with, as Darlene had stated in her letter about focusing what the museum does, right now with no extra staff, Darlene does basically everything, and the issue with, because we have the Vic Center with another full-time staff, she can do her step students or whatever, they can look after the Vic, and then the museum can go back to, with having the Vic, they can't do any programming, they can't do any displays or whatever that would, what's the word I'm looking for, that would enhance the focus of the museum. So they're very limited. So that's the reason to look for another staff member.
Does the county contribute anything to the museum? I'm trying to, no.
Well, actually, I shouldn't say they don't. Darlene applies every quarter for their capital grants that the county gives out.
Okay.
And I think, I'm not sure what it works out to.
You can't count on it. You can't count on it, though.
No.
You can't.
And
She
they're,
applies and they say yes or no.
and their budgets are getting tighter and tighter too, so it might not be happening. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Would there be a possibility of a compromise of giving the extra staff, but not necessarily putting the money in for the Vic? Is that an option? So you'd have the same, you still have the second staff that would be able to help out and give it a second set of hands. And if there isn't, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious that if there was that possibility where they get the second staff who's able to do all these things, would that help with the flow of the Vic instead of putting the extra money out there, the extra 8,000? So in other words, you're up 32 instead of 48. Is that a possibility?
That second staff member could be somebody who would oversee the Vic, but not necessarily be one of the bodies in there. They would be, but they could be, possibly.
If you don't get the step, would it be appropriate, and I'm asking this of the council, would it be appropriate for the museum to come and say, we did not get the step, could we then ask for further financing at that time?
Give them the full pot that they're asking for and have discussions on how much money we have to work out on the recreation department.
Okay.
I mean, we have people who've gone through the process and have provided us with information. This is what we can vote on. As it is, we can't really even vote on this budget because of the lack of information. So yeah, I say give them the full pot.
Okay.
It's fair.
Councillor Stenhouse.
I agree with you on your comment about at least we got numbers to work with. But this raise, I can't support that. Like, we got people losing jobs and working minimum wage. We're talking about getting rid of government housing. We need to bring more in if this keeps going. Because we're just going to be pushing people more into government housing and on social assistance if we keep giving I can't buy into this giving people a raise when when people are taking cuts and losing their jobs, I can't support that. But I do agree with your statement on we got numbers to work with.
Okay, it's getting late. We've been at it a long time. It's these budget meetings are a little bit tough. I'd like to just hear what the last two departments have fairly quickly. I'm kind of going, and we'll have to decide what we want to do with in terms of a budget here at the end, because there's all kinds of other things that we wanted to talk about, which was capital and amortizations and all of those things. So let's quickly go to the library, and they were looking for some more money also. Imagine that. What's the gist on the library?
The committee members can probably say more than I can on that. They all agreed to the increase at the committee level. So they're the ones that are going to have to explain it, I guess. That would be Councillor Gilroy, and of course Councillor Rose isn't here. So
they're looking at $40,000 more net is what I get, which is compared to last year about a 20% increase.
11,500 of that is for the auditor that we requested. They have their books audited every so many years, and the auditor quoted 11,500.
Okay.
So that increase is from, it's also added into this year's budget as an actual but not as a budget item, and it's in the next year's budget for 2019. So 11,500 of that is from the audit and not from the library requisition.
Okay.
There is some mandatory training that they have been putting off that is affects their status as well. We have, in the last number of budgets, said no to a lot of this training, and so it is a catch-up on some of that. But to offset this, one of the things that I think is very important for this council to understand is that everything we've asked from the library over the last couple of years, they're implementing. In fact, the head librarian is actually looking into developing a Friends of the Library. They've actually sent for information, and there's a number of people who've said that they're going to do it, which would then allow them to do some extra fundraising in the future. So everything they've done here, the reason we approved it is some of it was just some equipment upgrades, because they have a ton of people who, in fact, their internet usage is amazing. Some of it has to do with upgrades that we have asked them to do, and they're doing some for building maintenance, things like that. Everything that we went through seemed to be reasonable. There wasn't a huge amount for, as far as we were concerned, for wages or anything like that. It was more of things that had to be done in order to maintain the training levels that they needed to provide the delivery that they had to. And a lot of it, as I said, some were renovations, some were new equipment. If you've been in the library, they've got extra money now for programming. They've worked hard for that, and I applaud them for that. And the Friends of the Library that they're seeking to establish, that they're looking for people to be on too, they've done everything we've asked. And so for what they've asked in here, we felt that it was fair. And they did give us a budget, Michael.
And if you want to see the budget, I have everything here. In case you want to see it before you finalize it, this is everything they gave us, and you can look through it line by line if you want. But
Okay, let's go to the gas department.
The gas department depends a lot on how many gigajoules are sold and purchased. We've tried to break that out so that we have a better idea of the actual revenue that we have. the increase, if the price goes up, then the price of our sales go up, and so they kind of cancel each other out to a certain extent. We just make it money on the operating fee of $1.60 a gigajoule. We estimate that on the amount of gigajoules that are sold. That's where the money actually comes in. The sale of the gas and the purchase of the gas, they offset each other, so you can't go by that too much.
Okay, and it's looking like, when I'm looking here, the gas department looks very stable in terms of the amount that it's bringing in.
Yep. And in 2018, that half-time staff person that was out of the water department came to the gas department. So that the wages part did go up in this department, and yet it didn't impact the budget hardly at all.
I'm looking at the actuals that have been spent, and I know for 2018 the actuals are not finalized yet.
Correct.
But what do you have on your sheet for anticipated?
1,130 so far. But that's because of the fact, again, that the sale of gas has been a lot lower and the purchase of gas is lower. They offset each other, so the bottom line will still be similar. The bottom line is going to be at I'm just looking here, if we continue that, it will be in a positive situation by about 100,000.
Okay. Because I know in 2017, our actuals, we budgeted in 2017, we budgeted to have an income of 235,000.
And we did extremely well, yes.
But we had an actual of 415.
Yep.
And 2018, we're saying we budgeted for 102,000. And from what I'm looking on this other one, and it says we're looking at about an actual of about 233. That's what you'd estimated in September, but now you're saying it's about 130,000 or 113,000?
No, it's still the 230, so it's 120 to the more than what we had in our.
Oh, okay. So it's 236. So we had 415, 236, but we're again being conservative at 108. Is that?
No, it's the 235.
No, for 2019.
For 19, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm being conservative again, same as I did in 2018.
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking at.
Sorry, I didn't realize you had jumped to the next year.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Nope, no problem. I'm just trying to, because again, there's some more money there that.
And any extra money for that always goes to amortization, because we have hardly any amortization, because the equipment is old and we need to start putting money aside.
Yeah.
And that has increased this year.
Okay. So when we added all of this up, and just from my summary, which if we look at the net difference, the net difference would be
about 300,000 compared to last year.
300,000, or around a 12% increase. Which I don't know about you guys, but that seems too high for me. And over 2 years, from what we did last year, we had a big jump of 4,000, another 300,000. That's almost a 30% increase in 2 years if we go with this as it stands.
And recreation is new to that, to our town. And but like I said, but gas, it varies so much from year to year. Like even next month, it could be cold this month, and we could wind up making a $200,000 increase. We have no clue whatsoever.
Yeah.
We don't lose on gas.
No, yeah, and I think we got to get all of our other ones at that same point too. Our other utilities all making, and they do make money, which is great. And covering their amortization, which is good too, which we can get to. And if we get those numbers on what we get those as being cost recovery, how is that going to impact us? Any idea on any rumors on what our assessment's going to be? Is it going up, down, the same?
He was here the other day to check out some properties. He will have preliminary numbers for us, probably middle of January. That'll be very preliminary type thing, but he can't even give us the numbers until after the December 31st, because that's when he finds out what the market values are. That's when he finds out all his numbers and what he needs to use as his guide type thing. He knows, he's looked at the properties, he knows what he thinks they're worth, but there's a value that they have to multiply it by. I can't remember the terminology, and that's the number he doesn't get until the end of December. So he can't even give us a preliminary until then. I suspect the assessment will be higher overall, not for individual properties, but overall, because of the fact that West Fraser now will have that it was all completed in 2018. There was a few new houses in town. Overall, I'm estimating it to be a little bit higher. But if it's high enough, that means that each individual person might wind up paying less, right? It depends totally on the assessment. And that we will not have the final numbers till the end of February. So there was a couple of the questions that Councillor Rose had asked that I can answer. The linear question, the first question she had, I kind of chuckled when I read that because I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. Then I looked at the budget, and if you see in the detailed amount on the very first page where it says taxes, what happens is that when we run our calculation through our accounting software package, it gives us the whole number for linear, the complete number. And what happens next is the fact that I have to break it out into the different categories for AGT transmission. I shouldn't say AGT anymore, I should say TELUS. The cable, the SuperNet, the natural gas, everything else. It has to be broken out afterwards. So that number is actually 0. If you take the 69,000 in the first column, then minus the 69,000, it's a 0 balance. The numbers below it, the 28, the 14, the 6, and the 18, all add up to the 69,000. So it's the same as in every year. It just was presented differently for the budget portion when it first gets put into our system in May. And then after May, when it's finished, sometime in June or between June and December, I put it into the different departments. So that's all that was for that question.
Okay.
In regards to question number 4, that is hard to say until, like I said, we have the assessments. And that is usually when you finalize your budget, not when you do your interim. So just those 2 questions I saw real quick, and I figured I could answer those for you real quick.
Just for her sake, what about number 2? 2018 budgeted fees and fines much lower than anticipated?
I just got this paper about 5 minutes before the meeting, so I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail or to do the calculations. It's just those 2 I figured I could answer you right away.
Okay.
If somebody sends me the email, I was not CC'd on this email. If somebody sends it to me, I can respond and email it to all council.
Okay, so I guess we have a decision. I mean, it doesn't have to be made tonight, but coming up at one of our meetings, we've got to decide, number 1, is are we comfortable with this budget as it was presented? And would we want to approve that, or as an interim budget, would we want to look at approving a 2018 numbers? And I know there was a couple of small issues that might raise for Terry, she had mentioned, but that's another option on going forward. And then we can do our final budget and going from there. We obviously are going to need to have some more time to discuss because we haven't got to the capital portion and we're out of time. So with that one, and we haven't really looked at the reserves. And one of the things, Brian, I think I asked you about to get as a listing of what we have in our savings account or in reserves. If you could just summarize it.
That number I'm working on right now with the auditor, as a matter of fact, for the year end, and you will definitely have that by the end of December. But I don't know if I'll have it for you before then.
Okay.
So,
I'd just like to see what it's been
yes,
from
it's one of the
17, 18.
Yes, it's one of the big projects that the auditor has requested me to work on. I've been so busy I haven't had a chance to work on it the last month or two, but it has to be done before the December 31st audit, so it'll be done in the next few weeks.
Okay. So, Brian, how do you want to proceed with this? Have you got
I want Councillor Corky to make this motion. The council approved the 2019 interim budget based on the same totals, not 2018's budget.
I don't know how to read right now.
It's letters and not numbers, eh?
Yeah.
He's only used to reading numbers.
It's not a number?
Yeah. How do I read that? Yeah.
Okay. Can I make a motion? The council approved the 2019 interim budgets based on the same totals from the 2018 budget. Scratch.
The 2019 interim budget.
Yeah, so I said 2019 interim budgets. Interim budgets based on the same totals from the 2018.
I thought Terry said there was one thing that had to be added.
Well, she did say that there was a couple of items that might be a little bit of grief, but. Yep, go ahead.
Wait for the motion.
Made the motion, discussion.
I made the motion.
Councillor Long?
As a business person, if you started out your budget year with 16% of your budget up in the air, not knowing where the heck it is, how much it's going to cost you, would you take a contract and say, yeah, we'll do that, not knowing where 16% of it is? We have 16% of our budget not here, and we're supposed to make informed decisions so that when people come to us and talk to us on the street, we have an informed decision. I defy any one of you to have an informed decision on the recreation budget. It is not there, and it is 16% of your budget. And once again, it has not come in on time. We cannot approve this budget based on the information we don't have. If somebody comes up to you on the street, if Chris Clay comes to any one of you and says, so, explain to me about the recreation department budget that you've just voted on. You can't. You cannot explain it because it's not there. This is an exercise in good judgment and in good governance. And what's been thrown at us from the Recreation Board, we're expected to swallow this, and they'll give us the information later. And you're going to make your informed, elected, informed decision on this budget on behalf of the citizens of this community with 16% of it missing.
Just to make sure we're clear, the move is not to approve the 2019 budget as presented. It's to approve an interim budget with the same numbers as
Based
2018.
on the information that we have,
From
what you said,
Yes.
based on the information that was presented to us this evening, are you prepared to vote in favor of this interim budget? We do not have the information.
The 2018 budget, meaning no changes per se at this point in time.
At this point in time, this exercise has been an exercise in futility.
Got that.
This cannot You can't. If somebody comes up to Brian or to Judy and says, explain to me the budget in its entirety, you couldn't. Even if you memorized every single number.
But
We
at
need
this,
the information, and what my point is, I cannot vote, and I will not vote for this, and I'll ask for a recorded vote, of course. And then maybe, just maybe, the rec board and or whomever will treat us with the respect that we deserve and get us the information that we need. If they're the ones that are controlling the strings, then give us the information so we can vote on it. It's bad governance. This structure of the board, as was explained to me, was there to help as an advisory, and it would be there to have a nonprofit number. Not to have control over what we say and how we vote and on the information that we vote. And we don't have the numbers.
okay, we have to move on from that. You've made your point, but we've got a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussions regarding approving a budget with a 0% increase at this point in time, the same as last year? Councillor Gilroy.
I agree with Councillor Long, because by approving it, what happened to the staff member that moved over? You're automatically giving that salary back. You know what? When it comes down to good governance here, if this was the federal government or the provincial government, they wouldn't pass it just for the sake of passing it. They would look through it. And so if it means that we have to meet more than once before December 31st, we're going to have to do that, because I can't accept this one either. And I'm really, once again, disappointed that we made up those committees months ago. It wasn't like it was in November. Months ago to do the budget reviews. And I'm sorry, I cannot vote for this either.
Okay, any other discussions?
In regards to the rec board, I'm of the same mind as Councillor Long, in the sense that I'm a little confused as to, because I was under the impression that the rec board, once it came under the town, that their role would strictly be advisory and or to be the place to keep the nonprofit status that some group wanted to do something that they could go through the rec board. So I'm unsure where their approval of the budget comes from. And I agree. This was an exercise in futility, parts of it, because yes, we went through it, but we don't have the whole thing. So what are we approving? Like what? I don't know what I'm approving here. Other than you want to go with basically for the 2019 interim budget, you want to use 2018 figures. Is that my understanding? Is that what your motion is?
That's the motion. 29 interim budget, based on the same totals from the 2018 budget.
Then we need to have discussions on where we want to take the 2019 budget, because
Right.
that's not done. We haven't got all the information, and I agree. We should have had all the information. We know we have to make a decision before the end of the year. We know that there isn't much time, and who we can get with the time that's left in the year. Very little time with everything going on. So there isn't much time. That is a given. We know we need to keep going over this. We haven't even finished capital or anything. So in my way of thinking, we're approving this at 2018, so a 0% increase at this point in time. It's got to work for now, and then we will figure out the rest of the budget when we finalize this and we have some decisions to make. Because right now, I don't know if I'm comfortable going with the 2019 and saying there's an increase of 12%. Just can't go there. That's my viewpoint. But Councillor Long, we got like 3 minutes here, so we got to move quick.
2018 budget as presented to us, and keeping the 19 interim budget based on the 2018 numbers. We do not have the 2018 numbers. The Recreation Department does not have those numbers for us, making up approximately 16% of our budget.
But we do have numbers for recreation. No, for 2018, we have the budgeted amount that was given for recreation. That hasn't changed.
You don't have the actuals.
Well, yeah, we do have the actual. We don't have actuals for anything. We have the actuals up until now.
Up until now.
And we have the actuals for roads. We have the budgets for everything. This doesn't change. We don't know what recreation's asked, but we know what the actuals are. We know what we budgeted for.
We are being asked to vote on good faith. On the budget, the most important piece of legislation that we're going to pass to run this town, and we're going to be basing it on a surmise that everything's good.
No, we're basing it on 2018, so we're basing it on having a 0% increase at this point in time. Like it's saying we're not going to increase taxes at this point. We're going to have more discussions, but we're saying let's keep the doors open. Let's say here's the budget, so we can pay the bills as of January 1.
And so we need to sit down and talk about this and take the time to spend and talk about the budget and the information so that we have factual, correct information in front of us before we make the decision. And if it means having to meet 2 or 3 nights, then so be it. That's part of the process. I'm not rushing because I'm being told you have to. The information wasn't all there. The information was not provided to us, Brian, and so therefore, Mayor Panasic, and my apologies, and so therefore, we cannot, in good conscience, we have one role, a fiduciary responsibility to provide good governance. If we pass this the way it sits now, it's neither fiduciary responsibly, and it's not good governance. And I want to find out how the rec board is going to impact this town and control this town.
Okay, you got your
That's bad governance.
Any other comments? We're just about out of time. Councillor Long called for a recorded vote. We have to vote at this time. We all know what the vote is for. It's to approve the budget as an interim 2019 budget based on 2018 numbers. So the budget that we approved last year, using that to get the year started. Any questions? No other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Okay, so what's the next step, Brian? We're going to have another meeting. We need another date. We'll have to decide that tomorrow. Okay, meeting adjourned.